have any information about what has happened to your home?
Yes, it's a total loss. We're just trying to hold it together, try to help each other, stay positive, and everything hopefully will just fall into place.
The people of Summerland had to run for their lives through smoke and fire and destruction, and now they're trying to hold their families and their lives together. I'm Chris Walker, sitting in for Catherine Cullen, and this week on The House, we're on the ground in the Okanagan Valley with wildfire evacuees and their MPs, what people need now, what the Premier is promising, and why some politicians don't want to talk about the root cause of the crisis. And farming in drought conditions, how climate change could shrink farms as water runs dry. We'll hitch a ride on a side-by-side to a dusty carrot patch as our summer series on food security continues. Plus, forestry's fears ahead of Trump's tariff deadline, the new American CEO of a Canadian lumber company on straddling the border and the politics. But first, we're heading to the heart of Summerland's wildfire crisis. The House from the Okanagan is now in session.
We've got beans, some canned pears, multiple cans of tuna, corn.
On Wednesday, at the food bank he runs in West Kelowna, Troy McKnight has set aside a room for wildfire donations and food hampers for evacuees.
They needed snacks and food and Gatorade and hydration to keep them going while they were in shelter, and we've been partnering very closely with the Salvation Army, who have been providing the hot meals there.
He's been accepting donations from across the province and up and down the valley, including from the local Conservative Riding Association. Dan Albus, the MP for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna, is helping the food bank employees unload a pickup truck full of Pop-Tarts, Gatorade, and protein bars.
Not their first rodeo, that's for sure.
Albus's riding includes Summerland, which was where, on August 7th, the wildfire roared down from the hill, burning homes and sending thousands running for their lives.
If you can just imagine being woken up by your cell phone alert at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and suddenly finding that you need to be evacuated. So that's what 12,000 residents or so from Summerland had on Friday night. And many of them grabbed what they could. Hopefully they had a bag ready, but many maybe did not. And
today, Albus is heading south on a long detour around the fire to Penticton, where most of his constituents have fled.
Resources, there are going to be challenges, and there have been. People understand because anyone can see in the hills what firefighters are facing every day and how serious it is. But as they roll out emergency support services, as they try and roll out rationing out hotels and everything, there have been some major hiccups. And so I just hope, I hear the Premier is going to be there today, I just hope that there's going to be a serious review on these matters. I'm not looking to pick fights, I'm looking just to simply assist my constituents.
But getting to Albus's constituents is not so simple. It is a long and winding detour down a dusty logging road. We follow in our own car. We're driving this 201 Forest Service Road because it's the only way to get to Penticton from Kelowna. The Summerland fire came right across the highway, and it's still an active fire zone. So obviously driving through there is dangerous still. So anybody who wants to go from Kelowna to Penticton, this is the way you got to go. As we go around corners, you hear that, you can feel that washboard effect. We're just in this dust bowl right now. You can barely see cars coming at us. All the grass on the side of the road is brown. And this forest that we're in right now, this is very similar to the forest that was burning in Summerland. It's densely packed, replanted pine and spruce. 3 years of drought has left it absolutely tinder dry. So we're coming down the Forest Service Road now into the valley, into Penticton, and we're driving directly towards Summerland now. And you can see smoke, not only the low haze in the valley bottoms, like a blue tinge here and there, but also tendrils of individual spot fires, either ahead of or beside the fire front itself. So we're getting a sense now of the size of this fire, which is, I think, now 180 square kilometers, and basically is dominating the whole hillside across from us. At the Emergency Donation Center, volunteers have lined tables with anything and everything: toothpaste, snacks, socks, dish detergent. As we walk in, we meet evacuees, Susan Bushman and her daughter Nicole Haddow, picking up pet food for their animals. They both live in Falder, a hillside hamlet that was almost completely destroyed. Nicole's home was saved, but her mother Susan's burned to the ground.
I was in Edmonton when this all broke out, and my daughter from Summerland and her husband heard about it and went out there as quickly as they could. They rescued my husky, they rescued the cat, and also my son's girlfriend. They got out in the nick of time. So we're just trying to hold it together. And
unfortunately, a lot of Falder, there was people who couldn't afford fire insurance or any kind of house insurance.
Susan was one of those without insurance. She'll get no money to rebuild. Her daughter says it's been one disaster after another for her mother.
To add insult to injury, just in the last few years, her mother died, her father died, her husband died. All of our memories and mementos from them were there, and it's all gone. We're hoping that there will be some kind of government funding, because everything is lost. We had vintage cards that my dad wanted to restore, all gone. So
there are going to be provincial officials. The Premier's in town today. Dan Albus, the local MP, is here. If you had a message for, provincial and federal members of Parliament, and are there things that you'd like to say? Are there things?
Yes.
What kinds of?
They should be taking the fire situation here more seriously. It was so fast. We didn't even realize how fast it was going to be. It took 3 minutes to get down to the bottom.
3 minutes.
They're lucky that there's not more dead because it was so fast. There needs to be more fire preventative measures. We need to be focusing more on Canada, BC, our country. There's so much we need to do for us. And also, don't forget about the poorest people. Like, a lot of the time, they need more help. There's a lot of poor people that were out there.
Across the room, MP Dan Albus is huddled at a table with fellow MP Helena Conants, also a Conservative. She represents the city where people fled to, Penticton. She tells me she can relate personally to what she's hearing.
When I was younger, there was a fire coming towards my house, and I was about 10 years old, and my parents said, put a bag together, bring your things. And I brought together, at the time, the most important thing to me, which was my tennis racket, my tennis trophy that I won, and some tennis balls that had nothing to do with day-to-day living, but for me, brought me comfort. And so, of course, you want to bring your passport, your ID, maybe your most important pictures, but there are other things in your lives that, again, are so important to you, you might not realize till this time comes.
The MPs are talking to evacuees, hearing their stories. Emily Rondeau is one of them.
I just will say that it's day 5. Just this morning, we found our 102-year-old aunt that was evacuated from the Summerland Seniors Center. We were assured that nobody was left behind.
They just kind of went.
We didn't know if she was in Kelowna or here.
Albus explains that local health authorities have set up a hotline that families can call for information.
I have been in contact with a number of sons and daughters of residents of that care home who wanted to know where they were, and at least having that toll-free number has made it better. But these are things that we need to anticipate and need to build into our system.
Yeah, we did, and that number was great. We phoned it probably twice a day once it was up and running, and they just kept saying, she's not in the system yet. There was some contact where they phoned her son, my cousin, and so that's how we found her.
One of the things both MPs are trying to do today is get evacuees accurate information. But on social media, there is anything but. Albus warns against sharing misinformation.
I've pointed out multiple times through my social media just to be mindful that some people just don't know. They're walking on pins and needles and are quite anxious. That if you see something that may be questionable, please don't repost it unless you know it's from a verified source.
Along with discussions of how this fire started, there's also debate about the underlying causes and how it got so big so fast. And so I put that to Dan Albus.
Well, look, I'm not going to get into partisan squabbles right now. I think we've spent too long in this country talking about mitigating emissions. You know, we saw more emissions and greenhouse gas emissions from forest fires than our transportation sector. I think that, quite honestly, we should be asking ourselves, what are governments doing to help our communities to adapt? And part of it is forest management and wildfire prevention. And I'm not meaning to be partisan here, because I know we are going to have these conversations. I'm going to be pressing them, but those things have not happened.
Do you not want to have the climate change conversation? I mean, it is, after all, the scientists tell us that it's the driver of the heat. It's drying out our forests, and people might think, well, if you want to only talk about forest management, we're going to leave the emissions off the table.
Well, I would simply say that we have discussions about science, and we can have discussions about what's in our public interest. Right now, as a member of a constituency that is under major challenge, I do not want to be picking fights. I am making notes, though, and as I said, if there's one failure, I think, in this country, in this province, is we have not been talking enough about adaptation. But again, Chris, right now is not the time, because people are in need.
As painless as possible to people that are facing their worst moment.
Around the corner at City Hall, Premier David Eby is holding a press conference. We take in the tail end with Dan Albus and Helena Conans watching from the back of the room.
Comfort for these folks that the system is 100 times better than it was a couple of years ago.
Premier David Eby is promising support and relief for Summerland and laying out the criteria for calling in the military.
The only criteria is that our experts from the Wildfire Service or from emergency management say that would be a helpful resource.
Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes today's event.
We leave to discuss what we've heard, and Dan Albus introduces us to another prominent figure who's been watching Premier Eby's announcement.
It's the Mayor of Summerland, gentlemen.
Oh, hi, Doug Holmes.
Hi.
Chris Walker.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Oh, hi. Geez.
What do you think of what you heard?
Well, it's encouraging that he came here. We had a really good meeting with him. He listened, and we've just heard all these stories. My concern isn't the response. The response has been good. There's been some challenges at the evac center with the scale of this evacuation, but I'm thinking now in terms of the recovery.
Well, maybe I can ask Dan about that, because after the floods in Merritt in 2021, I remember you having real trouble getting the federal government to engage with that ongoing support. Any tips for the mayor here about how to make sure that aid flows properly?
Well, I think the first thing is to get everything in writing. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a case where the federal minister and the provincial minister both made a lot of comments to the mayors, both in Princeton and Merritt, of what they should do in the future. But then when there was a ministerial change, it was very tough to get the federal government's attention again.
Helena Conans is concerned about governments getting residents what they need right now.
I think it's important to stay positive, but there are still many people who do not have the services they need right now. They're still sleeping in their cars. They're not able to get the vouchers they need to stay in hotels. I believe there are quite a few hotel rooms available in this city, but they haven't been able to match services with people who are in trouble.
Dan Albus says he understands that in a disaster like this, not everything goes perfectly, and he's willing to extend David Eby some grace.
Obviously, him mentioning what we're hearing today is that people are increasingly wanting to know what the plan is for reopening when they can return home. And again, it does sound like BC Wildfire has given their rationale that there still is a danger, and until that danger is passed, then that end won't be proceeding. But the hope, at least for me, is that quietly behind the scenes, the district is preparing for that, because there's a number of things you need to do to restart municipal services and things like that.
Any thought about what the federal government should be doing? They haven't been here so far.
Well, I've spoken to Minister Parmar about this, and pretty much he paraphrased what Premier Eby said today, that obviously they view Canadian Armed Forces. This is where I get asked the most, why isn't Canadian Armed Forces here? And there's a lot of good reasons for that. It has to be where they can fit the jobs that are available. So it was interesting to hear the Premier say today that it would be perhaps for mopping up. The challenge you have is the logistics, where they're going to stay, what activities can they do, because they don't actually fight fires, but they can certainly be a stabilizing force.
Can I ask you a couple quick questions?
Okay.
We catch up with Premier David Eby, and I'm still thinking about Susan Bushman, who we met at the donation center, pleading for better forest management in places where people live near the woods, things like prescribed fire and selective logging. Many foresters and ecologists who study these ecosystems agree with her. They say that successive provincial governments have failed to address this problem. And just maybe that inaction cost Susan her home. I put that to the Premier.
For Susan and for everyone else who's lost property, I mean, I can't even imagine the devastation and personal impact that has. So, my heart goes out to her and her family, and we'll work with her and with other people who have been affected that way to make sure they're supported through the recovery process. The challenge that we face here in this province is we are, in many ways, one big forest. In this region, there's been an incredible shortage of water in the form of rain.
But that doesn't prevent you working on the forests, does it?
Well, I'm getting there. Okay. So that, and when you have a multi-year drought as we have here, you can do as much forest management as you want. When the lightning hits the tree and sets it on fire, it spreads so quickly. The spread here was incredible. And so through our Fire Smart program, it makes a big difference in communities. We are doing commercial thinning to respond and prevent wildfire. The scale of what needs to be done here is enormous. And the reality is we are going to see fires like this going forward. And in fact, they may be in increasing severity despite the management because of the depth of the drought impacts that we've seen in the province. And it's not just here, it's spreading east in Canada, it's in Europe. And so making sure we have the mitigations in place to save lives, save structures, and do the best response we can. That's why we've increased the wildfire service by 50%. That's why we do the Fire Smart program and all these other pieces. But it will not be perfect, and there will be other fires, and I wish I could say differently, but it's not the case.
Well, and we know that it's driven by climate change, drying out the woods and drying out the duff underneath those trees. I talked to Dan Albus today, who said that all this talk about carbon taxes and climate change has been distracting from the mitigation efforts. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't really know what to say to that other than, to my mind, it's totally not correct. The efforts of the government have been focused on fire mitigation. We've seen catastrophic fire seasons multiple years, and so finding mitigation wherever we can while recognizing that this is a massive forest-heavy province and that the droughts that we're seeing are generational in their impact. So that mitigation work will continue. We'll learn from each fire, but the idea that we wouldn't see fires like this if only there had been slightly different forest management practices is not correct. You see it in Washington State, you see it in Ontario, you see it out east, you see it in Europe. It is the reality on the ground right now.
Premier, thank you very much.
Awesome. Yeah, good to see you guys.
Thanks. Hello, goat. There's plenty of heartache here and plenty of serious business, but there are also little moments of weirdness and whimsy. Goats, for example. The parking lot of the local convention center where evacuees have gathered is now a campground, a canteen, a playground, and an ad hoc petting zoo. I follow the goats to find their owner and see Gregory Crowther's maroon pickup truck. One goat in the cab, another in the bed, grazing on a bale of hay. Hi, Greg.
Hello.
I'm Chris. I'm from CBC.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
All right. How are you?
Good, thanks. Who's this?
That's Quill.
Quill.
1-year-old.
1-year-old Quill.
Yeah, she's just starting her beard.
Quill's hungry.
Oh, they love this hay.
How did you get all these goats out of Dodge when you had
right
to?
Here.
Literally in the Dodge.
Yeah. The adults go in the back.
Yeah.
And there's a dog pen thing in the back for the babies.
Yeah. And this is all of your goats?
7. Yeah.
7 of them.
Yeah.
And then here you are in the parking lot. How have the goats been handling the parking lot?
Fine, except they're used to being enclosed and at night, and there's no hotel that is going to take 7 goats.
No,
so,
I'm not surprised.
No, I take them and I go to a park.
Okay.
Stay out in the open and one blanket and one pillow. And
are you getting any sleep?
A little, yeah. Not a ton, but it's okay. There's people so much worse than me. I'd be an idiot to complain, right? So.
Greg is determined to share his goats if he can put a smile on the faces of the children here.
I bring it for the kids, and their kids liven up, and then the happy kids go home, and it spreads to all them and wherever. And they're stuck in a hotel room somewhere, and the kids are bouncing off the sheets. Can we see the goats? Can we see the goats? That stuff, right? So.
Hello, Morgan.
Hi.
And hello, Simone.
Hi.
How old are you, Morgan?
I'm 11 years old.
And Simone, how old are you?
I'm 9.
And are you guys related?
Yeah, we're sisters.
You're sisters. Maybe it's a testament to the work of volunteers and neighbors like Greg pulling together to ease the stress on this community and its children that when we arrive at the Comfort Center at the local school, these two girls tell us they're actually having fun.
Yeah, we've came here for the past 3 days because we love it here.
Why do you love it here?
Because there's so many fun things to do and all the people are so nice. Yeah, it's fun to play in the gym, do all the fun crafts.
There's even dogs.
Yeah.
You want to tell me about what happened on Friday night?
We got evacuated and had to leave at about 1 a.m. Yeah, our mom had to wake us up.
Were you scared at all?
Yeah, it was pretty scary. Yeah, I was very scared.
Could you see the fire?
No, not from our house.
Okay. But you knew that it was dangerous, huh?
Yeah.
One of the volunteers helping the kids today is teacher Alicia Kura.
I am a grade 1 teacher, been a grade 1 teacher for 20 years, so I definitely have a good understanding of the littles.
When something like this happens to a family, they have to leave their home quickly, and there's a big scary fire. What's that like for kids?
Oh gosh. You know, it's going to be different for different kids because we all experience things based on our own perspectives. But generally speaking, for kids, it will be, and sorry, I'm getting a little choked up. It's going to be tough. We have little kids who, you know, their moms have shared that they've been really brave, you know, and 2 days later they're saying to mom, I was really scared, but I didn't want to tell you because it was so busy. Kids are amazing. As teachers, this is who we're here for. We're here for the kids. And yeah, it makes me emotional. I've held it together all day, but talking about the kids, that's what gets to you.
It's the end of the day, and before we head back up that logging road, I asked Dan Albus and Helena Conans about what we've heard today and about helping the most vulnerable.
We saw this with the floods in Merritt. Some of the most affordable housing was a trailer park, and it was completely devastated. And many of those individuals never came back because there was nothing to come back to. So we always have to bear in mind that. And I just want to get political for a moment because I'm a member of the opposition. I just want to be mindful for people that when bad things happen, it's the job of the opposition to point out gaps in the government's thinking, in the government's policies and actions, and to ask them to bring it back in line with the values and the concerns that Canadians have. And so that's not being negative. That's actually saying life is about finding solutions.
And I think this is going to really highlight that there are so many people in our communities that are already living from paycheck to paycheck, and this is going to really take people over the edge. I've already come across many people who have had to pay for their hotel rooms because they couldn't get a voucher. They couldn't wait in line more than 10 hours. So they've had to use a credit card to pay for a hotel room. And right now it looks as if they're not going to be reimbursed. And this is going to take them over the edge. I'm really concerned about what's going to happen after we clean up, after people go back to the homes, for those people that have already been living on the edge or paycheck to paycheck.
When you walk in this door, nobody knows you're an MP necessarily. They don't know what party you're with, maybe. They don't even know who you might be. And so just as a citizen, what's it like for you to feel what's happening in this room?
I think everybody in here, and including myself and Dan, I'm sure, you walk into this place and you feel like a sense of belonging. I think that's what everyone is feeling right here. Sorry, I'm getting emotional because it's been a tough few days for everyone here, for everyone in our communities, and it's that sense of belonging that is so important.
So I find myself, you have to be somewhat stoic because there's just waves of issues and people, and you just have to say one at a time, and try to help out as many people as you can. But I also have to say, though, when you do see this stuff, this is what fills up the gas tank, where you see people donating their time, donating their effort, doing whatever it takes to make someone else's life a little bit easier. I think it reassures us that, when there emergencies happen, Canadians get together and we have each other's backs. And that's really how life should be. Yes, there's a lot of things we got to deal with, processes and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you look at this comfort center, people are finding comfort in one another.
Next up on the House podcast, drought conditions have meant severe water rationing here in BC, the concerns and the possible solutions. Stay with us. I'm Chris Walker, host of Daybreak for CBC Kelowna, sitting in this week for Catherine Cullen. You can let us know what you think of the show. You can email us at thehouse@cbc.ca or leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, stop in.
All right. Long before the wildfires hit this region, BC farmers were already having a tough summer. Drought has meant punishing water shortages and strict water rationing. The dry conditions are pretty obvious from the front seat of Rochelle Zelany's ATV.
It's so dusty.
Yeah, you just see the plume of dust behind us. Oh my gosh.
All this summer, the House has been taking a deeper look at issues around food security. And so on Tuesday, as smoke from the wildfires smothered the Okanagan, I went to Coldstream at the north end of the valley to ask Rochelle how the drought is changing how she farms and what that means for her family's future. We were joined on the farm by Anna Warwick-Sears. She's a water scientist and the former head of the Okanagan Basin Water Board. She's also run in 2 recent elections, once for the BC NDP and once for the Federal Liberal Party. And our conversation started, of course, with talk of the wildfires on everyone's mind.
When I walked up here and said hi to Rochelle, she's like, "How are you doing, Anna?" I said, "Well, checking my phone once an hour to see if a new fire has cropped up." I mean, seriously, almost everybody I know is feeling like that. It's just a crazy summer, and it makes you feel really anxious. There's arsonists, there's lightning, there's everything seems unpredictable, and then you have to have your go bag packed.
And of course, on the farm, all of our work is done outdoors, and so working outside in the smoke for hours upon hours it has its challenges.
Right now, I have a little sort of sand in my throat or frog in my throat, but your eyes and generally your stamina and your mood
people just wear out quicker, including myself. I just get headaches, or it's just it's hard to be out in it all day long.
Does it affect the crops at all, all this smoke?
Yeah, they're mostly underground, so the crops, like the carrots themselves, are not impacted by the smoke, but there is this filter of smoke which is impacting how much light is actually getting to the plants. So we are seeing crops slow down. The broccoli is slowed down. It means a broccoli that we would normally harvest on Tuesday might not be ready till Friday or Saturday, and it causes a little bit of delay. And the other side is the positive side. The smoke brings ash, and ash is actually really good for the soil, so it's actually going to benefit for next year.
Let's talk about the drought, which is, of course, a driver of both your water issues and the fire. Anna, for people who aren't familiar with this area and haven't been following this, how dry is it now? How can you put this in some context for us?
This is the 3rd year of drought conditions in the Okanagan, and this is the most extreme that it's been really since we've started keeping records in 1925. Right now, Kalmalka Lake is the lowest it's ever been recorded. Okanagan Lake is the lowest that it has been since they put in the infrastructure in 1944. The forest is dry. One characteristic of Okanagan agriculture is that it's almost entirely irrigated, with the exception of some ranching. So the way that the irrigation is supported is that we have massive reservoirs in the upper watershed. So what happened this year is that there was not enough snow to fill up the reservoirs Also the ground of the forest was very dry, so it was much less runoff as the forest soils soaked up a lot of water. So the reservoirs didn't fill. And, when the water manager is looking at her water to apportion out for the year, she's realizing that unless she put in these restrictions, the reservoirs are going to run dry before the end of the farming year, which is really a worst case scenario.
So, Rochelle, let's talk about how drought has affected how you farm. Take us through the winter and into the summer and just tell us about the conditions.
So as we started planning for our 2026 growing season, we noticed that there was a low snowpack year and less moisture in the valley. And for us, we were just going to continue and plant as normal, because typically we would, even if there was a low amount of snow in the winter, we would receive a decent amount of rain to be able to operate under normal conditions. And that rain would usually happen between March and June. And so we planned and planted as normal until the end of June, and then realized we really have had negligible rain to be able to sustain this. During that period also, the regional district of the North Okanagan called a drought and had us on water restrictions starting very, very early this season, and moving to stage 3 water restrictions, which is a 70% reduction in usage by June 14th, which is unheard of in our farming career, and we've been doing this for 40 years. So we continue to farm with really monitoring our water usage and minimizing anywhere we could, and kind of still expecting that at some point we might potentially see some rain. And now we're into mid-August and still nothing. And we calculated it out, and right down to the very last cubic meter, we were not going to have enough. And so we were going to have to start sacrificing crops.
And people have been sharing water allocations. Now that, for somebody who doesn't know water and doesn't know farming, that's gobbledygook. What does that mean, sharing water allocations?
So the transfer of water allocations in our regional district has never happened before. This is a new thing that has happened this year to try and get water to farms that need it from farms that wouldn't utilize it. So there's, everything's calculated out and everyone's metered. And so they decided that if farmer A has 100 cubic meters and they're willing to transfer 50 cubic meters to another farm, then that farm has the benefit of using an additional 50 cubic meters of water, which to many farms, this is a huge benefit and will help save crops.
I'm hopeful that we are using what we've learned this year in order to get much more flexible about the rules around sharing water, the open-mindedness of different parts of the agricultural sector to share water, advanced planning. Planning's always best done in advance and rarely is around a lot of water issues. So I think that if the provincial ministries are more flexible, if we have some water use planning in advance to decide what will happen in terms of a crisis, and we have a lot of better communication and agreements among farmers, that could make a huge difference, just taking care of the worst of the crises in different years as they arise.
Okay, and so we're getting a little closer to policy making and politics, which we're going to dive into here in a sec. But can you tell me more, Rochelle, about adaptation, both here in terms of what you do and also what you think local and provincial governments can do in terms of being, as Anna said, being more flexible?
I think it was a great start to initiate this water allocation transfer. It has a huge benefit. One of the changes that we've implemented this year, along with calculating down to the last cubic meter every bit of water that we're using, is implementing drip irrigation. So it's not on this field. We actually rent another 3 acres just down the road, and we put 3 acres of drip irrigation there and have significantly decreased the potential water use on that property.
And Anna, how well do you think the provincial government has both prepared for this and then reacted to this?
I think that we're behind in preparation, and I think one of the issues also is that there aren't as many staff as there could be at the provincial level, so it makes them slower to react. I think everyone really understands the seriousness of this, but Ministry of Agriculture is not one of the best funded ministries. We need more staff, we need more extension staff, and we need more of these very tangible plans that may be customized to each individual area. One of the things that the Ministry of Agriculture has done is provide a lot more funding for water storage. And this is something that I think will be really important in the future, expanding our reservoirs, reducing the fire risk around our reservoirs. There's a lot more on-farm storage funding than there used to be. It's not easy for a small farm like this one to put in a great big water storage, but if it is happening at a larger scale or for larger farms, it can make a difference.
The BC Conservatives this week called for an increase in water storage, saying the NDP had been sort of flat-footed, had not been reacting fast enough, should have seen this coming and should have worked earlier to get that storage. How much do you think about the politics of this, and do you, like, what kind of interactions do you have with provincial officials? How much do you pay attention to the policies that are then trickled down to the regional district level and then to you?
Up until this year, basically none. We just farm our little plot of land and grow food for our community and pretty much ignore the rest. Just kind of do what we can. So I've been learning a lot this year and becoming more involved. And we did have a visit from the Minister of Agriculture and the Parliamentary Secretary as well, just last week actually, which was really amazing to have them out and to tour them around the farm and to have discussions about what can be done. I think that it feels like this season, this drought, the response from the government has been very reactionary and just came with a lack of preparedness. And so it feels a little bit like we're flying by the seat of our pants in a way, with like implementing these water allocation transfers and doing things that have never been done before, and having discussions about water that we've never had as a wider community. Like maybe these conversations were being had at the table, but I certainly wasn't invited to them. I feel like there's a portion of agriculture that was missing from those discussions in our area.
And to be fair, it really has not been this extreme for a very long time, maybe not since the drought of the early 1930s. It's a very extreme condition. And one thing that typically happens is that we get a large amount of rain in June. So I think a lot of people, a lot of water managers, and probably some provincial staff were just crossing their fingers and anticipating that we would get more water in June, and it just did not arrive.
There is a confluence of climate-related crises now in this valley, right? Water, wildfire, drought, all related. You've run for the provincial NDP and for the federal Liberals. These are both parties who are now in power. How do you wish they would talk about what's happening here?
Boy, that's a big question. I just want, my biggest desire is that we could all think and work a lot more proactively. Planning, sure, but just we know that there's going to be more flooding. We know that there's going to be more wildfire. The upper watershed is just a firebomb waiting to go off. It's extreme conditions all around us where climate change is very obvious. It's in our face. And there are a lot of things that we can do with infrastructure, with planning, with better communications, that we can get ahead of this instead of trying to, provide disaster mitigation funds or patch up things once they've broken. What I want more than anything is to have those proactive solutions. I think that's the only way that we can go. And I think that, we need senior government to get in the mindset that it's okay to fund things in advance. It's so much cheaper.
It's sometimes much harder to sell to the public and to constituents in election years that, look, we're doing this bit of work and taxing you for something that is going to have an effect in 25 years. How do you get around that problem?
I don't know. It's like, how many times do you have to get hit in the head to learn a lesson of, putting on a helmet in a baseball game? it is just something that you can expect. It's happening over and over and over again.
When you think about, you have to be an optimist to be a farmer, I think. When you think about the future of farming in this valley, how do you imagine it? Is it, if this kind of weather and this kind of climate continues, is it viable? Is it viable in a different way? Can you talk about that?
We have these discussions every day right now. It's already an exhausting season with so many changes happening with smoke and fire and drought conditions. But yeah, we're constantly planning for next year and what that might look like. One of the things we previously chatted about was potential funding for water storage, and it is something we're thinking about for next year. That, though, comes with, capturing rainfall that would come off roofs to be able to store that water. And this year we've had no rain. So this year those reservoirs, if we had water storage, they would be empty anyway. And so there's a lot of different discussions happening. We've actually discussed, well, maybe we just plant less of the field, just overall. Just we don't, we have 23 acres in production. Maybe we only grow like 8 next year because maybe that's all the water we're going to have. Like maybe that's all we can grow. And that's a huge hit to our local food security and our food system here in the Okanagan because we grow a lot of food for people.
Wow.
Speaking as one of your loyal farmers market customers, I wouldn't like to see you plant less.
If there's enough water for it, we're going to plant as normal. But if it's a real issue where we're going to be as tight or tighter on water next year as we have been this year, we're going to have to make some big, tough choices.
My conversation with Rochelle Zeleny of Zeleny Farms and water scientist Anna Warwick-Sears. There's one more big crisis facing this region. This weekend, negotiators are staring down a deadline: the Trump administration's threats to slap 50% tariffs on a swath of Canadian goods. And at the forefront, Canada's forest industry. Ashley Cribb is the CEO of Gorman Brothers. It's a lumber company based in West Kelowna, and she joined me in studio on Friday. Ashley, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
We know that the existing 45% tariffs on Canadian lumber have been difficult for companies like yours. Now an extra 50% tariffs possible, looming. If Trump makes good on that, what will happen to your company?
Well, I appreciate that. If you look back 3 years ago, the tariffs on our products was 8%, right around 8%. And when you think about going to 45%, that's huge in itself. Now, the Section 338 tariff, it doesn't apply to all of the lumber that's being transported across the border. Okay. But there are wood products impacted. And for us, we have a handful of products that will be impacted by that additional 50% tariff.
What would the effect be on your company then if they were implemented?
So we're very fortunate that we have ways to work through that. I mean, it's not easy, and it takes a lot of creativity and a lot of thought about how you do that. But we have a facility in Orville, Washington, that is part of our overall strategy, and it's a reman facility. And so we are able to transport products down to that facility and add value there, and that helps us with the strategy.
Okay, I want to ask you more about that in a minute. If the tariffs do go into effect, what would you like to see the Carney government do?
Well, we need to get it resolved very quickly. You know, I mentioned the impact on some of our lumber products, some of our pattern products, and some of our high-grade S4S boards. But there's also impact on wood products beyond that. There's impact on plywood and veneer and LVL and glulam. And we need to get it resolved. That additional tariff, the wood products industry in Canada, it's very difficult to respond to that for these products.
Canada's been making a push generally to diversify its trading partners, and I know your previous CEO said Gorman Brothers once shipped about 80% of its products to the U.S., recently more like 50%. Are there buyers outside the U.S. that you can pivot to?
We certainly evaluate global buyers. We have an active program selling into Asia. We also sell into Europe, and we continue to look at how we grow those markets. There's competition in all those markets, and it's not easy. It's not a long-term solution, but it does help in the short term to continue to explore those export markets.
Do you think you can trust the U.S. market again?
Well, I do. I mean, as you've heard in the past, we're still shipping, 50 to 60% of our product into the U.S. And we have great distribution partners there. We have a high-value product, and it's an important part of our market, and it's going to continue to be a part of who we sell to.
You mentioned that remand plant in Oroville, which is mainly, I understand, been a shipping facility. It's just across the border. Mm-hmm. If you move more of your processing there to evade the tariffs, does that mean losing jobs in Canada?
Well, actually, it's always been more than just a shipping location. So we've had the ability there to add value to our product for many years. And we're continuing to look at how we do that. And I don't expect any impact on our employment in Canada. It's just a matter of how do we get the most out of what we are shipping over to that facility.
Right, but isn't that doing what the Trump administration wants, which is bringing that processing back into the United States? Isn't that the purpose of these tariffs?
I mean, I certainly think that is his long-term goal, is to try to build more manufacturing in the U.S. And, I came from a company that was very active in the U.S. South, where we were building mills, and there's been many, many Canadian companies who have built mills in the South. But for Gorman, because of the way we operate, we could still produce more material here, even if we produce, if we could do more at Oroville, we could still produce more of that raw material here. Oroville doesn't produce any raw material, so we still have to do that here in Canada.
You're American, and your experience in the lumber industry has been mainly in the U.S. market to date. What advantage does that give you as you stare down this tariff threat? How do you think about that?
Well, I think it gives me a unique perspective because I've been on the other side of the border and I've seen the thought process and the actions and the strategies that people have taken. So I think it positions me well to help us think about our strategy longer term and how we move forward. And that's exciting.
And Gorman is a Canadian company, and of course
Correct.
There's lots of nationalism around this tariff threat. Do you feel split loyalty there?
I really don't. I believe that, and I've believed for many, many years, that we need to resolve this trade dispute. And it is for the best interest of our industry. And whether it's U.S. or Canada, it's really important that we find a resolution going forward for the benefit of our whole entire industry.
You talked earlier that it's given you a unique perspective being American and having a career in the United States and then moving to Canada. Do you understand the American position?
Well, I think that's pretty hard to understand the logic behind some of these actions. We can't get into the mind of Donald Trump and see what he's thinking on this. But I do think that there's a longer term issue here that is being addressed through these short-term actions. So what we need to have is something longer term that gets a resolution to that softwood lumber trade agreement. And I can't say what that looks like. We have industry people working on that, and we are looking forward to how those negotiations continue.
That was a problem long before Donald Trump came along.
It was.
So would you expect that it would be a problem long after he's gone?
It could be.
Ashley, thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, Chris. I'm glad to be here.
CEO of BC Lumber Company Gorman Brothers, Ashley Cribb. That's it for us this week. Thanks to the team who put the show together with me, Benjamin Lopez-Steven, Derek Vanderwyk, and senior producer Jennifer Chevalier. Technical production by Miguel Plant. Thanks also to Jay Bertonoli in Kelowna. I'm Chris Walker. Next week, the House will be coming to you from Saskatoon. Thanks for listening.